Hello everyone, my name is Francesco Cipollone. I'm the CEO and founder of Phoenix Security, and today I want to take you on a journey on exploitability. Exploitability for us means several elements, and we recently published a research on exploitability that explain what are the elements that forms exploitability. Now, there are some reputable data source that tells us when an exploit is actually exploited in the wild. There is a proof that the exploit is available out there, and there is proof that there is a fix available out there. I'm talking about CISA non-exploited vulnerabilities, CISA Kev, also known as, and CISA has been doing a wonderful job. I would like to acknowledge their work that has changed the state of the industry, together with also acknowledging EPSS work that have contributed on identifying what is more likely to be exploited in the next 30 days. They don't apply in all the specific cases, so there are some exceptions where you might want to consider cyber threat intelligence integrated with your vulnerability management suite, like us, Phoenix Security, for those edge cases. But all of those elements fundamentally forms a concept called exploitability. Now, if you see the animation in the background, we can see the exploitability, the popularity of specific exploits for a data set that we analyzed. In the data set, we analyzed more than 400,000 exploit records available in GitHub, Exploitability, and various other sources like Packetstorm and other exploit information available out there and maybe not directly available. And in all of these, basically, we found that sorting vulnerability and this dataset by criticality or by exploitability leads quite different information out there and leads a list that is very different, including using EPSS and using verified exploit out there. And I would like to add maybe a little bit of a caveat of what it means to be exploitable. Now, exploitable has several shapes and factors, starting from the likelihood of exploitation. So what are the reputable data sources that tells us that there is an exploit out there that is available for your library, for your software, for that particular exploitation that a scanner and the vulnerability management software like us have flagged as likelihood to be exploited, and to which degree. Now, as I mentioned, there is a degree of exploitability depending on where your asset is relying or lying on, if the particular library is reachable or not, the particular piece of code is reachable or not. On top of that, there is the likelihood of exploitation. So how popular is this particular exploit to be in the wild and attacked in the wild, as well as the verified information about this exploit and where those verified information come from. So is this in CISA Kev? It's probably likely that that vulnerability is being vetted by human, and there is an actual exploit out there that is being verified, and there is some proof that it's being exploited at scale. Using EPSS is another interesting and useful data set and data source. But without further ado, let's look at the data. Now, you can see here that the winner, of course, looking at the popularity, means that it's the aggregated compounded effect of how many exploit information are available for the specific vendors. Now, if we dive deeper and we look at, for example, Cisco, there are a lot of exploits available for Cisco. Then if we move forward to Microsoft, of course, Exchange and Windows 10 are very popular, followed by Office and other sources, because those are likely to be exploited. And then we have, of course, Log4j with a lot of exploit available. Now, all of this is looking at exploit availability across the board while if we move to criticality, you see the scenario change, not drastically, but a little bit. So this is using the score that National Vulnerability Database has given to those vendor and specifically, sorry, not vendor, but to those vulnerabilities belonging to a specific vendor. Now you can see here that, of course, Oracle and Apache, because of Log4j, are probably the one with compounded more critical vulnerability, followed by Microsoft, Fedora, Google, Red Hat, VMware, and so on. Now, if we move forward into exploit verified, this is information where the exploit has been verified from sources like Metasploit, and there is some evidence that this exploit is actually working. It's not just a proof of concept, it's just a piece of code lying somewhere. That is the difference between exploit verified and popularity, where popularity is an indication of how many times an exploit is available out there and might be replicated multiple times, or might be easily accessible out there, while the exploit verified tells you a different story, tells you how many of those product and exploit are actually verified and are out there and can be used with a click of a button in different exploit package like Kali Linux. Now, the reason why Cisco has been very present in this dataset is because of the amount of products and vulnerabilities related to that Cisco has in the NVD. In comparison, is dwarfing Microsoft, regardless that Microsoft has 808 type of product, while 262 just in CISA Kev, that is the non-exploited vulnerability database, and a total number of vulnerability count of 10K, 10,000 vulnerability, with a very high market capitalization that kind of exceeds a little bit the market capitalization of Cisco, and the second one is Adobe, and so on. Now you see these numbers of products and vulnerability are dwarfing each other. Now, in the exploitability database we use, and in the data set we use information around EPSS, highly exploitable. And if you see the effect of EPSS high exploitable overall 6,124 is much bigger than the rest of the data set, dwarfing almost 5% of the whole data set of the total vulnerability available in NVD. Now, if we compare the EPSS with the current data set and EPSS high, the number that we have is almost 40%, is quite a high number for these data sets and the exploited vulnerability, or the highly exploited vulnerability. Now, in this data set, of course, they are not all of them. Not all of them are highly exploited, but just to give you a comparison between the whole NVD and the fraction of the actual exploitable or highly exploitable EPSS score, and that's why we call it highly exploitable EPSS. Now, if we move towards the bigger data sets, the number of exploit verified in this data set is a fraction of, so that to give you an information between popularity and the total exploit, between the exploit available, that is almost a quarter of the entirety of the exploit DB, with 417 exploit available right now in Metasploit, non-verified and verified. But out of those, a lot of them are available in these data sets. But just to say, the popularity element is a good information together with the exploit verified, together with CISA Kev, and so on. So I hope this information was useful. I hope you find exploring this data set of highly exploited vulnerability and the various data sources together with the critical, high, medium, low, the highly popular, the high popular in EPSS, the average one in EPSS, and so on, to give you an idea and to have a bit more understanding of what are those vulnerabilities and why highly exploited vulnerability are important and what is the nuances. A lot of this information is available out of the box in Phoenix Security. We analyze and look at all your vulnerability that gets from the various scanners, and we compare those nodes with what's exploitable out there together with your open source scanning solution to give you the best of breed and refine fundamentally in the minimal amount of information. That is 5 to 10% is a number that changes, but it's definitely not the entirety of the NVDs. That is definitely not the entirety of the critical vulnerability, because those are a much higher number, and most of them between 40% are in the high, 20% are in the critical, and 41%, 42% are in the medium. So those are really high numbers, and the average of CVSS score is 7.4 weighted across the whole data set. And I hope this information is useful. Again, don't burn out looking at exploitability. Understand what exploitability means. There are other factors, as I mentioned, like reachability of a specific piece of code, availability of information in the network, and reachability on the network. And all of this is automatable with Phoenix Security. So reach out or focus on what's exploitable the most, and don't burn out. Stay safe out there, and goodbye.
Phoenix. Fix vulnerabilities today before attackers exploit them tomorrow.